Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Four Corners Network. This is Territory Talk. I am one of your hosts, Kris Rex, alongside my best friend, John Punn. And today we were going to be talking about Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling, PPPW, based out of Hawaii, ran by the Maivia family. And this is probably one of the biggest and richest dynasties in pro wrestling, this family. I mean, this stretches to the Inouye family, the Johnson family. It's almost every Samoan you hear of is a wrestler.
Like they said, the Samoan numbers as a whole is very small, but the impact they had on this industry is monumental.
Yes, yes. And on this episode of Tales from the Territories, on this roundtable, we had Rocky Ikea, the son of King
Curtis.
King Curtis Ikea. Thank you. Kevin Sullivan, Bruno Lauer, who is known as Harvey Whippleman,
Harvey Whippleman or Downtown Bruno during the Territory days,
and Lars Anderson. Now, it was kind of a given that they would be covering this territory, with The Rock being a producer of this series. That was a big thing when they announced this series, that The Rock was producing it.
I think every territory is going to have an episode. How many territories total are there? Maybe.
But 20? How many times is this territory talked about?
And like this in detail.
Yes, and that's actually what Kevin Sullivan opens up with, is that people don't understand how influential Polynesian pro wrestling was. He says in the 60s, they didn't have many stations. Well, Rocky has said in the 60s that they didn't have many stations that show for Hawaii TV. So you either watched wrestling or you pretty much watched wrestling.
Yeah.
And Kevin Sullivan had 3 idols in wrestling, and he got to work all 3 of them while working in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It was monumental, not only for the talent that they produced and the cards that they put on, and what they did for Hawaii and the Samoan culture, but it was also a bloody and a nasty and violent promotion. And it was
it'd be like that in every territory.
Yeah, back in the days, I guess that was the thing. It was
so keeping the kayfabe, making everybody believe it was real. Every storyline had a bit of realness in it, and is to keep everybody coming back, wanting more, and like I said, believing everything that they see, from opener to main event.
Yes, and the promotion was founded, owned, and operated by High Chief Peter Maivia, who in reality that was not a gimmick. He was a High Chief in the tribe. He was head honcho. If you want to talk in mafia terms, he's the boss. He's the godfather. He was born in Samoa, and he trained in New Zealand before he settled in Hawaii. He would marry Leah Maivia, and together they would start a dynasty that continues to this day.
Yeah, I wish they talked more about Peter Maivia in this.
Yeah.
But I do love the one story that we did get, because this makes this episode, the 6th episode, the 3rd episode to have an episode that has an eyeball being ripped out of somebody's head.
That would seem to be a common thing, I guess, in the territories, to settle a dispute, huh?
Right? If you think about it, we watched 6 episodes, 6 different territories. 3 of them had an eyeball out of somebody's head. So we're going to talk about Peter Maivia, having brought in Billy Robinson from the UK, one of the toughest, purest shooters in that time. All right. So but the Samoan culture, and Peter Maivia resembled the Samoan culture to a T. The way they ate, the way they spoke, their mannerisms, everything. So these two go out to a restaurant. They're sitting together and they're eating. Peter Maivia is eating with his hands, like the Samoans do. And Billy Robinson took offense to it, and he said, what are you, a heathen? Why don't you use a fork? And that just set the normally calm-mannered Peter Maivia off. He got up, punched, threw Billy Robinson to the ground, got on top of him, and pulled the eyeball out of his head. Picked him up off the floor with his eyeball hanging out his head, threw him through the glass window of the restaurant. You know, it's insane, you know, how easily these people just, let me just yank somebody's eye out of his head. Like, that would want to do to somebody. Like,
and apparently that's why Billy Robinson has always had a crooked eye. That goes to show you push a man to his limits and you disrespect a man's culture like that. You know what I mean? Especially this man is giving you the respect of, you know, you're sitting down having dinner in his home, you know, in his home country.
I would say to Billy Robinson's defense, how much do you think he knows about the Samoan culture? You know, I mean,
when in Rome, bro. When in Rome.
The UK also, all the way to Hawaii, in the middle of the Samoa. How much knowledge did you think he really had, especially in the 60s, 70s? You know, there's no internet, there's no social media, there's none of that to really learn unless you're in a library.
I mean, but leave the man alone if that's how he's fucking choosing to eat, you know?
That's how I eat a lot, you know?
But that wouldn't be the most violent things that have happened, because there were more violent things that happened. There was a riot in the mid-60s that involved King Curtis when he went on TV and cut a promo on Neff Maivia, saying his forehead was thicker than normal, which that made him a Neanderthal, and he called him feminine for wearing the cultural skirt or dress. And this set up a match between King Curtis and Neff, and Curtis was in charge of picking the police officers. On one side were Samoan officers, and on the other side were Hawaiian officers.
And then that crowd was split too.
Yes, it split the crowd as well. Neff dominated most of the match, and they were going to the finish, but Curtis pulls the cover off the buckle. Neff splits his head wide open and is pouring, gushing blood. Just picture that image in your head. Curtis pulls an Alka-Seltzer in Neff's mouth, and he's hanging him from the ropes by his hair. yeah, and he's bleeding, he's foaming from the mouth, having a seizure, while the crowd is absolutely fucking losing it. And Peter Maivia was going to run in, make the save with all the baby faces, but it was too late. A chunk of cement, like a brick of cement, came flying and tossed, and it hit a police officer. So that pretty much started even more of a riot. And Rocky was scared being there and was afraid for his dad. A full-on riot was happening at this point, and one man was able to save it all. Peter Maivia.
Everybody in that crowd respected to the fullest.
He's the High Chief, and the High Chief.
The bell ringing was his symbol, but since the bell had fallen over there in the riot,
the ref had to go get the bell. Yeah.
So, he finally rang the bell out, and that's, when the calmness happened. But, everybody pointed fingers, so nobody got, prosecuted for that piece of concrete.
Well, at that point, with that many people, you really can't prosecute anybody. But Peter was able to calm the crowd down when he grabbed the mic, and he pretty much talked to them and was able to calm them down. Imagine that. A man was able to stop a riot. One man.
That's how much power he had in that territory.
Yeah.
That was his homeland. No matter where he started, that's his homeland.
Yeah, unfortunately, Peter would die at the age of 45 from cancer, but left the promotion to his wife, Leah Maivia, and she realized she inherited more than just a wrestling company. It was a gold mine that we would come to see that everybody wanted a piece for and would kill for.
Yeah. Yep, isn't that when she started planning Hot Summer Nights? And she brought in all the different territories, Crockett, NWA. She started planning one of the biggest shows in wrestling at the time. One of the biggest drawing shows it was in Hawaii. She's also the first woman promoter, the first minority promoter, and she's the one bringing all these different territories together for one longest 16 match card.
It's kind of the equivalent, and I kind of hate to use it, but I think this is the like most accurate analogy. It's kind of like the Queen of Coke. You know, it's kind of like here's this woman in this mostly male dominated business with people that can hurt you. You know, that at this time it was the same type of thing, and I mean it's respect. There's power there.
It is. It is.
There's power.
And being that she's Peter Maivia's wife, she already was known to have that power.
Yes. Yes.
There was nobody, like they said, she was probably the toughest Samoan out of all the Samoans over there anyway.
100%.
You know, nobody was messing with her.
Listen, I'm sure with the snap of a finger, she could have anything done.
But that's crazy. And then after the huge success of this show,
before we get to that show, why don't we talk about the first time a wrestler ever screwed themselves? the Sullivan screw job.
Yes. I love Kevin Sullivan, man. That's awesome. You know, he's in this storyline with Prince.
No, with Siva Afi.
Oh, with Siva Afi. You know, and he's the foreigner in their town. And I think it was Leah that asked him to, call the Samoans coconuts, right? And cut this promo calling them coconuts. He does this promo where he rips open a coconut and says he's gonna peel Siva Afi's head like a coconut. And you know how those fans are. They did not take kindly to that. You know, he's at the show fighting for the belt, and Leah has the nerve to tell him that he's winning the title. He's like, oh, hell no, you trying to get me killed out here? So he's thinking of, how not to win the title because he knew that he wasn't going to make it back to that line alive if he beat this man.
And he was told he would have protection from the Samoans. But the same Samoans that were supposed to protect him were drinking the kava, which is a psychedelic moonshine that they make. And they're drinking it, passing it around with the other Samoans.
With the locals, yeah.
With the locals, because that's their people. So he really couldn't even count on the security that Leah had told him was provided for him.
So, what's funny is as soon as the bell rings, he grabs Siva Afi by the tights and pulls him on top of him, tells the ref, count or I'm going to kill you. Ref counts to 3. And he runs back to the locker room in less than 4 seconds, pops open a beer. All the fans and even Sifa Ali is confused. And like, what just happened? Did the match start? Did the match end? What just happened? Leah now is telling Kevin Sullivan he's got to get back out there and screw him over again. And Kevin Sullivan is not, I'm leaving here alive tonight. He can get the belt. It's not about the belt. It's about my life and my safety. That was funny. The first person to screw himself out of the championship when there's many people that would screw you out of that championship.
It was a smart move. I think that was the smartest move to make. I know it would probably wasn't the best idea to go against Leah's decisions, but in that thing, like you said, it's life or death, bro. I'm trying to live.
Yep.
I'm trying to live. Now, after that story, we got to the big show, the big event. And this event is really kind of what started everything kind of going downhill for Pacific Polynesian Pro Wrestling. It was hot summer night. It was the biggest show ever at the time. And they brought in people from Japan, WWF or WWE, whatever you want to call it, Crockett Promotions, and the regulars that worked for the promotion at the time. And on the episode they show footage of Andre the Giant as a featured attraction. They drew 22,000 people, and Sullivan had asked how they got so many egos to work together, and Lars Anderson had replied that they worked well because all of them wanted to get in good with Leah. They all wanted a piece of that. And the thing is, they were
I
filming.
don't, I don't think it was more getting good in. It's getting good with her so they could take it from
Yeah,
her.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like so that they can get in good and get the territory. But she was filming obviously the show, and Crockett's had said that they would take all their talent off the show if their guys were filmed. So there was no footage of the main event of Flair versus Siva Afi, and she knew she had to watch her back as everyone from the mainland, from America, was trying to steal the territory.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy.
It was crazy. It got so crazy to where it was even life or death. Think about that. Wrestling. It's funny to think about nowadays that wrestling would be life or death like this. But back in those days, no, this was life or death. And
And for a lot of them, it was all they had. Wrestling.
for Lars Anderson, he was on the wrong side of that. Um, he was Leah's booker, and
Then, after one phone call before he flew, in 3 days, he went from Canada to Hawaii
yeah,
to be her.
just to be, and that's just again the respect that the Maivia family had and that promotion had. Um, Apparently there was a problem with one of the stockholders and employees at a bar. They felt they could do Anderson's job better than him, so they attacked him from behind at the bar, and they pretty much beat the shit out of him to the point where he was swallowing his tongue. They were gonna try to kill him, throw him in the ocean, drown him. Luckily, the police were able to show up and stop it, and they had to take a spoon and put it in his mouth and use the spoon to peel his tongue back out from his throat. That
His tongue and choke on his tongue. Yeah, that's crazy.
that's crazy. And to think all over wrestling, and you would think that would kind of be the end of it. Like, okay, that's a little too extreme, but no, everyone still wanted a piece of Hawaii, and it led to a lawsuit against Dunbar Wakayama, who was
Yep.
a former commentator. Why don't you tell this story, Punn?
So we got Dunbar. He was the commentator a long time for Leah. And he decides to start his own promotion, and he decides he wants to use her talent, use her superstars. So Leah and Lars, set up a meeting with him and let him know if you're going to want to use these people, you're going to have to pay a booking fee. You're not going to use Rocky Johnson. You're not going to use our guys unless you're paying to use our guys. These are our guys. So, he took it as he's being extorted, and got the FBI involved. He got wired up. So now he goes to meet with them in a restaurant. He's meeting with Leah and Lars again. And this time, he exchanged money for use of these wrestlers, which is a booking fee in this wrestling industry. So, it's not extortion. It's not a crime. But, she gets the money. They walk out. And as soon as Lars and Leah walks out, FBI agents with guns drawn in their face, takes them in. It's fucking crazy,
Yeah, I mean, again, all over. It's funny to think about now, all over wrestling. When you say that, all over wrestling, but back then, is
Everything was wrestling.
yeah,
They,
yeah, and it's what it makes me think like, wow, what did wrestling really be? When you hear these old timers say, what did it become? Half the time, I'm like, okay, things have changed for the better, but there's things like that with how serious people took it. Maybe not to the extent of trying to kill people, but it was like you kept it real, just that whole vibe of the territory days.
being that Bob Geigel was the one to actually explain to the jury and get it over what a booking fee is,
Yeah.
you would think they beat the charges that the company would take off.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they did the same event that with the Hot Summer Nights exactly a year later. They went from drawing 22,000 to 1,900.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning of the end. After she beat the case, they deported her back to Samoa, which is kind of fucked up. She won. She didn't do nothing illegal, and they still got rid of her. And that was the beginning of the end of PPPW.
Yes, and like you said, it only drew a crowd of 1,900 compared to 22,000. I mean, this really affected not only the business but her life, her livelihood.
And
Um, it's sad that they treated her that way. Like she beat the case. It was like a personal vendetta against. And I personally feel like maybe there was somebody that wanted the territory that knew somebody that can get this done. Okay, she beat the case. Can we get her deported? Like, who do we know that can get this done? And that's just my my way of thinking about it.
well, she was illegal anyway. It was no problem to deport.
Yeah, but to really make it that big of an issue.
Yeah, that's why they wanted to get her out the country and send her back over.
Exactly.
So since she wasn't being locked up, they deported her.
Yes. And I think this was a great episode. I really do. This was a more insightful episode. It didn't feel like there was a dull moment. There were a few other stories on this episode that we did skip, but because we kind of want to get to the main points of the promotion. If there is any footage out there, I'd love to see some footage, especially that Hot Summer Nights. If there's any type of footage out there, I'd like to see it. And to think like without all of this, would there wouldn't be a Rock, like Dwayne Johnson, the Rock.
Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. I mean, that was a beautiful tag team to come out of that territory.
And then from that, you have the whole Anoa'i family, Roman Reigns, the Head Shrinkers,
Ishii, Umaga, Yokozuna.
yeah, like almost every one of them are. Lance Anoa'i, who we know, there's also Jacob Fatu. I mean, there's so they still run wrestling.
You have
They still run wrestling, bro.
Yeah.
They still run wrestling.
Honestly, I don't think it would ever stop. Even Roman Reigns has a daughter right now. If he has more kids, Usos kids, Solo Sikoa's kids, Jacob and Lance, they're gonna have kids. This family is gonna grow and they're gonna continue to be in this business for a long, long time.
And you know what? They'll always have a link back to Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling. And I think that's a great way to end this episode. On behalf of me and John Punn, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to another episode of Territory Talk on the Four Corners Network. If you'd like to stay updated on news, current events, and episodes that we post, right above Punn's head at the number 4 Corners Net. That's at 4 Corners Net. You can find me on all social media platforms at Rex Wrestles. That's REX Wrestles. Punn, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me, John Punn, JONPUNN, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you want to look. That's where I'll be at. Come say what up.
Again, thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in and starting to make this show a success. As always, be excellent to each other and keep supporting pro wrestling.